However, I always say that if it was now, I would never have gone into the industry.
Wow.
Yeah. Back then, it felt like there were just so many opportunities. It felt like the costs weren't high. When I did all the calculations, everything was, the rent was quite high still because I was in Darlinghurst, the middle of the city, So the rent was high, but I was able to calculate it so that we didn't have to be uber successful to do well. We just had to get by, and we just had to get 1% of the market, really 1%, because I looked at the spending in the area and people's disposable income at the time was so much higher than it is now. And so now even 1% of the market is nowhere near as much as what it was back then, even though, incomes are higher and so on.
Hey friends, it's Lee Safar here with some exciting news. The introduction to regenerative coffee farming workshops are now available on demand in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. These workshops are designed to give you actionable insights into the future of coffee farming through regenerative agriculture. Whether you're a coffee producer, roaster, cafe owner, or just passionate about coffee sustainability. For coffee producers, the workshop is available for just $10, and for everyone else, it's $20, a small price to pay for knowledge that could transform your understanding of what it's going to take to grow coffee from now on. Led by our incredible professors Angela Barrero, Murilo Bettarello, Felipe Croce, Carlos Ordóñez, and João Araújo, the workshop is packed with practical knowledge and strategies to help coffee farmers and the entire coffee industry adapt to the challenges of climate change, rising costs, and market demands. If you're a business owner, this workshop is a great and affordable way to inform your employees about the challenges ahead while also supporting Map It Forward. This is also a great workshop to share with or gift to your coffee producers. Head to mapitforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the description to purchase the on-demand version and start your journey towards a more sustainable coffee future today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of a 5-part series with Carol Salloum from 3 Tomatoes and Almond Bar, even though Almond Bar isn't open anymore. I will not accept that it's not a part of your cachet. So, Carol, welcome back to this episode of the podcast, everybody. In this series, we're talking about 2025 from the perspective of a cafe owner in Australia. Now, Carol, as we said in the last episode, is the owner of a very successful cafe, one that has been going for many years and has at least a few more years before any changes would be made to something like that because of lease agreements, blah, 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 blah. So in this episode, though, given the moment that we are in, we want to take a look at, compared to what we talked about in the last episode, which was the landscape of the industry at the moment, we're going to talk about how 2025 is different from when Carol started in hospitality 17 years ago. And Carol, 17 years ago was a whole different game in hospitality, wasn't it? Yep. Talk to us about how it was different in Sydney, because I got into the industry about that time, like a few years earlier than that, but still around that time.
Okay, so I had come out of teaching, so very, very naive, I suppose, probably good and bad. Mm-hmm. It was my dream to have a restaurant with the Syrian food. And obviously something that respected our food and not just the late night, because it was always the late night. Mm. And going in, it was hard. Of course it was hard, and it was the steepest learning curve of my life. Mm. However, I always say that if it was now, I would never have gone into the industry.
Wow.
Yeah. Back then, it felt like there were just so many opportunities. It felt like the costs weren't high. When I did all the calculations, everything was, the rent was quite high still because I was in Darlinghurst, the middle of the city, So the rent was high, but I was able to calculate it so that we didn't have to be uber successful to do well. We just had to get by, and we just had to get 1% of the market, really 1%, because I looked at the spending in the area and people's disposable income at the time was so much higher than it is now. And so now even 1% of the market is nowhere near as much as what it was back then, even though, incomes are higher and so on.
And to give people some reference, the distance between Almond Bar, which is the restaurant that was first opened, and where Three Tomatoes is, it's probably a good 40 minutes drive out of traffic. How long?
Well, about 20 minutes now with the tunnels.
There's all these new tunnels and fancy shit that's happened since I was living in Australia. So
yeah, but the tunnels with $15,000 tolls.
Yeah, exactly. Like the amount of tolls you have to pay. I borrowed my mum's car when I was just in Australia, like a few weeks ago. And I was just going to do something in the Northern Beaches and come back. I gave her $100 for tolls and I said, please take these. I feel so guilty I'm sure I spent so much money on tolls. She's like, get the fuck out of here. What are you giving me? But that's how it feels. Like Sydney is
beep everywhere.
Everywhere. Well, and this goes to the heart of like how 2025 is different in a country like Australia and in a city like Sydney. People's lifestyles are being taxed, for lack of a better term, just for living in these really beautiful cities. And now when you're spending, like a good amount of money on tolls, and folks, we're not talking about like $1 here and $2 there. Okay, like you say in your interpretation, like how much, we're talking quite a bit of money in tolls, more than a coffee at least.
Oh, yeah, like one beep could be $6. That's more than a coffee.
Like, and this is where people are having to make these choices, right? If I'm going to drive to work and it's going to cost me $6 plus in tolls, and that on the way back, I'm going to sometimes have to choose between my coffee and not my coffee.
But that's what's been happening is people have now either cut back and bought a coffee machine, as we spoke about, or they now have, instead of 2 or 3 coffees a day, they'll have one, or instead of a large, they'll have a small, as things like that. Just little changes that they're making.
Right, and that's before you've put your prices up.
Oh, before, yes, yeah.
So what are you charging for a latte? Let's say like the small and a large.
So we've just put up the large, and the small latte is $4.50, and the large is $5.50. So we're still on the lower end.
What was it before you put it up for the large?
$5.
Okay. So $4.50 and $5.50.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're not using high-end specialty coffee for that, are we?
No.
Okay. So what do you anticipate? So if we look back, as we're talking about what's different from now and when specialty coffee, or when the coffee industry started, about 17 years ago, 20 to 17 years ago, what we saw in Sydney was this real divergence starting to happen, where this thing that we knew was different in coffee, it wasn't Lavazza or Illy or Segafredo or anything like that. Toby's Estate and Campos started coming into the story and creating this different kind of divergence from what was typically going on. And later we started calling that specialty coffee a few years later.
Yeah.
And back then, folks, an expensive coffee was about $2.50, would you say?
Probably $3. Yeah.
To see in that time that the price has only gone to $4.50 in your cafe for a regular coffee. And everything else has gone up. The cost of milk has gone up. The cost of labour is out of control.
Yeah, that's the biggest, yes. Yeah.
So back in those days, I would have been making anywhere between, I don't know, probably I started my career earning about $18 an hour.
Yeah.
And then I ended my career making about $35 an hour.
Mm.
I'd hate
And that's
to.
on the higher end.
That was on the higher end, and that was like 8 years ago. Now, if you're looking, I mean, if you want a barista, what's a barista asking today? If you just want someone off,
starting 35. Yeah.
People's brains just popped out of their head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reality of running a cafe. Most cafes are running in Australia, are running their labour at 50% of their revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we work in it, we are able to keep that down.
Yeah.
But if we didn't, it would be at 50%. Absolutely.
What was it like back then to run labour costs?
30%, 35% max. If you got at 35, that was high.
And how much strain does that put on you as an owner, knowing that that's where labour's sitting, knowing that still rents are going to go up if interest rates go up as well?
Well, it's hard because it's not in proportion. So, labour cost increases by 10, 15%. You can't increase rent goes up by 4%. And then, energy goes up.
Insurance goes up, energy goes up, yeah.
Milk goes up. All of those things go. Let's say an average of 15%.
Mm.
You cannot put that onto a cup of coffee. You just can't. Not at the same rate.
No chance. I remember when I was a barista, and I was a barista for 15 years, right?
Yeah.
And it was my favourite job in coffee that I had ever done.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I still miss it. But I remember the most challenging part of what we did was when the owner had come to us and said, listen, coffee's going up. What do you mean coffee's going up? How much is it going up by? We're going to put it up by 10 cents a cup.
Mm.
And the backlash that would come from customers at 10 cents. Do you remember those days?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, especially if it was in a business area where people are coming from work, it's even worse.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
you just couldn't.
I worked in the areas, like all of my work as a barista was in the same area as Almond Bar.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I knew that these are people who are wealthier, sure, but the people who are coming into work in those areas, these are not wealthy people.
No.
They are price sensitive.
Yeah.
So when I look at how these people used to react to a 10 cents increase back then, how are they looking at a 50 cents increase now or $1 increase now?
Well, it's funny, because we were having this discussion the other day that in Sydney, Western Sydney, the prices are higher than inner city and inner west. And I'm not sure why, but people are accepting it, and people obviously have the money to buy it. So I'm not sure what's happening there or why that is the case. But whenever we've told the customers that we're increasing, because most of the time we tell them beforehand, we have a sign up that tells them it's going to increase, and most of the time they don't care.
What notice do you give them? How much notice do you give them?
Usually about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So a decent amount of time. This year we didn't, only because it was just the large that was going up by 50 cents. Everything else stayed the same. So we didn't. We just verbally told them every time, each time. And that's just for the regulars, of course, because the others don't know. But when the first time we increased the price, there was a little bit, there was some comments just thrown at us, And because I drive a nice car, which is not a Lamborghini, but a nice car, a BMW.
It's not a Toyota. Nothing wrong with Toyotas, but let's just be very clear. Yeah.
And I even got comments like, is that how you're funding your BMW? And I said, come on. Your 20 cents is not going to fund my BMW. Yeah.
Well, and for those who are listening from where I'm living, they're going to be like, Oh, that's cute. She's got a BMW. Right.
There you go. See, it's like a Toyota for them.
Well, and the reason I say that is because it's all relative, right?
Yeah,
like
that's right.
Yes, you may have a BMW, and yes, you may have, you may be paying your expenses. Tell people how many hours a day you work.
Like physically in the cafe, working?
Oh, total. Yeah.
It could be 10, it could be 12, it just depends. I've got a child, so sometimes I'm forced to, I can't not, I get him to bed and then I work.
Yep. And when you had both 3 tomatoes and almond bar, how many hours were you reckon?
18-hour days.
So my point is, folks, that her BMW hasn't come from a handout. No. It hasn't come from screwing over customers. Like, she's worked 17 years. I've watched this woman and her sister almost kill themselves over these restaurants and cafes. It is grueling to do this. It is stressful, and I don't say this stuff to say don't do it. I say this stuff to encourage you that if you want to do something like this, if you want to own a cafe one day, learn what's necessary so that when you do it, you can be successful.
And it's also to prepare them for what to expect. It's one of the other things, you know how you said it's quite stressful. It's also energy sapping because people, they come to you, you're not just the person that makes their coffee or you're the person that makes them smile, that makes them happy, that asks about them. You could be the only person that asks about them that day. They rely so much on you. And I don't realize this until I'm in it, that there are times where people are waiting for me to go to their table, and say hello. And and if I don't, they're like, oh, I don't get a hug, or I don't get a hug. I get that comment. It's that neediness that we've built that, which is fantastic, but it's also, I've got to be prepared to give my energy away a lot of the time.
These are the differences that create the difference between a sterile neighbourhood cafe that probably isn't going to create a connection with the neighbourhood and survive what is currently being experienced, and the cafe that will, because it's not loyalty, it's connection, I think. That is the difference of what's going to define and why you guys have stood the test of time over 17 years building these businesses, because people look for the sisters that built the Almond bar. Right? So in the next episode, folks, we're going to talk about the challenges that the stakeholders are in and around 3 Tomatoes are facing as we look at this very challenging landscape in 2025. So join us for that. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.